What is Jennifer Kreatsoulas? Did you not think I was gonna howl at the beginning of the show? What is shaking y'all? Golden Month episode 104. Dr. Jennifer Kreatsoulas is with us today to talk about something really, really particular that's going on with so many of us that are falling into these New Year's resolution traps. We think that it's a new year. We think that it's these new beginnings. It's these new opportunities, but we can fall into some familiar, dangerous traps that actually separate us from being able to fully grow in 2019. That's why Dr. Jennifer Kreatsoulas is here with us to talk about the New Year's trap that we can fall into. The New Year's new you trap, right, Jennifer? That we can fall into. So for those of you watching, stay tuned because we've got a super cool show. Talking with Jennifer Kreatsoulas, founder and author of let me see the name of this book so I don't mess it up. I don't want to put, I almost said Melanie's book. So, the body,
okay, mindful. You can plug her book. I'm okay with that.
Well, yes, she's got a great book, but you also have a great book out as well called the Body Mindful Yoga book that we're going to talk about. Jennifer also is up there in Chile, Pennsylvania right now, working in yoga and also working when it comes to eating disorders and therapy for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those two things come together or how those two things won't come together at this time of the year. By the way, quick shout out, Melanie is watching us right now. I've been waiting for this interview for months. That's why I could not cancel the show. Chris Valeriano, loving what you got going on over there in Atlanta today. So we got Atlanta, Pennsylvania, Los Angeles. We're going worldwide today and talking about this idea of new year, new you, and the traps that you can fall into in making these resolutions, right? So for those of you who have not met me yet, my name is Mark Cordone. I am the founder of the Make Money Coaching Program. I'm the Chief Disruptive Officer of the Joy Revolution, but more importantly, I'm a positive psychology coach. Now you have a doctorate, Jennifer Kreatsoulas, and I hope that I've practiced your name so much that I'm gonna wear it out by the end of the show. I don't know if you write off positive psychology, but it is a hotbed over there in Pennsylvania when it comes to positive psych. So I'm so excited to talk to you about the merger of all of these different kinds of, I wouldn't say doctrine, but domains. These different kind of domains that come together in order for us to move forward. So, Jennifer Kreatsoulas, I don't know how familiar you are. I don't know how familiar you are with the idea of positive psychology, but all positive psych is this for me. Number one is how happy are you today? And number two, how much are you living life at your fullest purpose? So Dr. Kreatsoulas, I love your last name.
I think you can say it better than I can at this point.
So how are you doing when it comes to living life in full happiness today and living life with full meaning and full purpose?
How could I not be happy in this moment? I'm talking with this vibrant individual. His energy is bursting through my computer screen. I'm happy. I am vibrating with happiness. I'm happy. Things are good. It's good.
I love it. So for those of you living the dream, for those of you who are living life full out like Dr. Kreatsoulas is right now, I want you to do something. Kreatsoulas, see, I'm slowly weaning off all the things like Jennifer and Doctor and just saying Kreatsoulas.
See, I admire that so much because the people closest to me can't even say my name. They won't even try it. I'm like Jen K, Jennifer K, JK. So, hey, big massive points to you for even wanting to say my name.
I want to go there. And so, Kreatsoulas, can you give us a heart?
Oh,
Can you give us a heart? So for those of you watching, look at what Kreatsoulas and I are doing right now. The red hair, the red shirt, the red hearts.
I wore my my New Year, New You flannel for our talk today.
Fantastic. This is my 2018 New Year, New You shirt that I've not changed out of yet. So.
I'm glad you're in Atlanta and not here in Philly.
Yeah, it's all good in the neighborhood. So for those of you who are feeling the love right now, for those of you full out, just like Who is this right now? Chris Cruz Valeriano in Atlanta. Give us some hearts. Let us know that you're alive, that you're living life. Now, this is the other thing. A lot of people think that positive psychology is this area of, hey, it's 24 hours shits and giggles for, am I frozen? No, I'm not. It's 24 hours shits and giggles for positive psychology. It's happiness all the time. It's Taco Tuesday every day. That's not necessarily the case. Positive psychology is related to body image and yoga so much because it's about mindfulness, about your ups and your downs and your all arounds, and integrating all of those things together, the mind, the body, the spirit together, so that you can actually experience higher levels of joy, higher levels of social impact. So for those of you who are like, wow, last week I was feeling really happy. Last week I was in full purpose. And like this week, I'm not feeling it, Cordone. I'm not feeling it, Kreatsoulas. That's cool. That's part of your journey.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes your story beautiful, right, Kreatsoulas?
Absolutely. That's where the learning is, right? That's where the shifts happen. Right? That's when we know that we're connected to our lives.
Oh my gosh, I'm so stoked for today. I'm so stoked for today. So for those of you who are like not living life in full purpose or feeling that heart right now, you got a headache, give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're living life. Jennifer and I are here to entertain too. We want you to have a good time while you're here. We've got some heavy stuff to talk about, but we also want you to have a good time. Let us know that you're living your life. Your heart is beating just like everybody else. Give us a thumbs up. That's cool. Now, here's the last part before I ask you about your life, Kreatsoulas, is for those of you who know that tomorrow and today is going to be even better than yesterday. Whether you're a 1 on happiness or a 10, whether you're 1 on purpose or a 10, if you know that today is going to be even better than yesterday, we've got another button down there that we want you to hit. It is called the wow face. Kreatsoulas, I want you to show me what your wow face looks like. I can't believe I've got Dr. Kreatsoulas making a wow face. What do you got? What do you got?
Can we hang out every day? This is really good for me.
I love it. I love it. TC Casey, I'm happy. You're happy, Jennifer. Melanie is dropping it. Jennifer Kreatsoulas is the real deal, folks. Listen closely as she lays it down today. Chris, namaste, fellow yoga practitioners.
Oh my
Body mindful yoga. I mean, you've got people just dropping it. You've got lightning bolts coming from Los Angeles on you today. We got Chris making the wow face. Chris, thank you for interacting with us today. We hope that this is going to be a great one. Without further ado, Jennifer, it's time for you to take the microphone. And before we go into anything else about sort of yoga, body image, the New Year's traps that we can fall into, what's your story?
Well, let's see. I don't know if I can follow this introduction so well. I'm still laughing.
Good. That makes me happy.
All right. So what's my story? My story's, like everyone's story, my story's evolving. But the story that has really led me to this point is a recovery story. I've been on my healing path from an eating disorder for over 20 years. And now I have the really beautiful blessing of giving back to the world, to the eating disorder community, and taking all the wisdom that I've learned through my personal travels in that story and supporting others and offering others hope and sharing tools and really empowering others and affirming others in their story of recovery or whatever their story is. In my case, like I said, I work particularly with people in eating disorder recovery. But that's not all that I am. I'm also a mother. I have 2 little girls. I'm also a writer. I'm also a wife, friend. I'm also a yoga practitioner and a variety of things, right? So I think one of the greatest moments in my story that I've reached is that ability to say, my identity is not this diagnosis. Right? There's more to it than that. And so a lot of my work is really empowering people to see that in themselves, that, through the practices of yoga, we are already whole. We're not fragmented. We are not a diagnosis or a list of diagnoses. We are not a pain in our shoulder or our back, or, we are already whole. And I love, positive psychology, yoga, all those types of tenets and disciplines that help us to come to that wholeness. And there's so much healing when we accept ourselves as whole, which is a very different message than we're trained to believe.
Yeah, so let's throw this out there. Let's go there right now. What is the message that we're trained to believe?
That we're fragmented, that we're not good enough, right? That we're not good enough, that we are intrinsically broken, and we need to be reaching outside of ourselves for the answers to fix ourselves, right?
And you know what? This is not the first time that I've heard this, and in so many ways, I guess my follow-up to that kind of question is, who is sending that message out and why?
I think it's a great question. I think it's a big question.
Yeah.
Obviously there's, sorry, I'm losing my microphone here.
They don't want you to they don't want you to say who they are.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a machine here, right? The social messages, the cultural messages, the familial messages. I mean, this isn't brand new. These are messages that have passed down. And now that we live in such a an image concentrated world, right? Not only are those messages are embodied in front of us in these images, and it's just like exploded, that we can't really always escape these messages, whether they're visual, whether they're content, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
There's just this notion that we must be always seeking because we're not good enough, right? Yeah. Versus seeking to fulfill ourselves or seeking to empower ourselves. It's the opposite message. Like, something's missing in you. You need to be better. Who you are is not good enough.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, to go. This is gonna seem tangential, but I was reading this book by Wallace D. Wattles yesterday called "The Science of Getting Rich," and he says the exact same thing, that people put out messages that were fragmented. And, so as I was reading that book, I was, asking intrinsically, well, why do they put that out? Why is it so important that, like, as Chris Cruz is saying, cultural, societal, religious programming, basically what you just said, Jennifer, does that? Why is it so, ubiquitous that message is being sent to us on multiple levels? And it does seem as if there is, number one, these truths that people are subscribing to that have been just so passed down that they think that it's the absolute big T truth, or that folks don't want to explore the truth because that keeps them in positions of power.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean, I definitely do think that, this is definitely about power. And, where I come into this message is, well, can we shift the locus of power? Right? We can spend a lot of time having this conversation. Where are these messages coming from? Who are putting these messages out? Right? And we can have that conversation. We can have that very intellectual conversation. It can also be an emotional conversation. But at the end of the day, if we can look inward and figure out where our power sits, then we can start relating to those messages differently. Right? So, there's a lot of people in my field who are kind of tackling those messages and wrestling with those messages. And I praise them and thank goodness they're doing that work. And my work is more like, what? Let's let that be, and let's look at what we can do within ourselves so that those messages don't have so much power over us.
Okay, I'm loving this, and I can already tell that this audience is loving this. We got Canada. We got Canada tuning in.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm coming across clearly here. I'm glad my words are making sense.
We got Walter coming in from Canada. This idea that somewhere outside of ourselves will be complete. There is no over there that Walt is talking about. So you're completely resonating with the entire state. The entire state of Canada right now. Chris is on fire right now, right? Rather than looking and trusting within. y'all who are watching right now, you're picking up what Jennifer's throwing down. I want you to share this. This is a special one. I can already tell. Share this. By the way, Kulas, I see you in Toronto. Nikki Cook, we see you. Thanks for showing the love right now. So be sure to share this out. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And it's not that we're separate from the social world we live in, right? We're not separate from it. But what the step that we can take is understand why the social messages that get us heightened, that push our buttons, understand why. What is it about that language that hits something inside of us personally? And do the work to understand, oh, so when I hear this word, it puts a knot in my stomach. Well, what is that about? Then we understand it. Then we take the power away from it and we can find new language, right? We can find new language.
That is so awesome. Now, to be able to pull this back to your own story, can you talk a little bit more, or please talk a little bit more about how your story has become one in which sort of these messages were affecting you? You know, I've always wondered if there are people who are more vulnerable to the messaging than others, you know, and what those messages sounded like for you, and how you've been able to sort of take those messages and kind of cut the cord with them and like replace that with empowering language.
So I think, you know, there's a lot of messages that I've worked to understand and reshape and reframe for myself. And I think one of the biggest ones that I want to share today is kind of the language that gets used around mental illness. You know, as a woman in eating disorder recovery for so long, you know, the core belief was, I have a demon inside of me. I have a monster inside of me, right? I am possessed. And this is the language that's used, you know, very commonly around mental illness. But, you know, whether it's people who have not experienced mental illness, that's the perception. But even people who have, I know in the eating disorder community, the language that's often used is, my eating disorder is telling me to do this. You know, I have like this monster inside of me is telling me to do this. And look, I've been there and I've used that language and I understand it, because that very much is the experience, like that there is some form of possession going on, that there is this other voice in my head. And so I can appreciate that language, and I'm not criticizing people for using it. But I really want to offer a new approach to how we talk about this, because the longer we insist that we have a monster inside of us, the longer we remain fragmented, and the longer we feel powerless. Right?
So what was the point for you in which you went from seeing that as a sort of, you know, sort of a monster inside of you that was separate from you, but was still controlling you, to, I don't know, like, I mean, again, I'm thinking about yoga as this sort of integration piece. So I don't want to like lead you.
No,
but
that's a pretty good guess. Yeah,
okay,
for sure. Yeah. No, I had a really severe relapse of my eating disorder, or the eating disorder. See, there's a language thing there, right? I versus the eating disorder. After my second daughter was born, I was really overwhelmed by motherhood. My first daughter was just 2 when she was born. I was still sleep deprived from having one already. And I was so overwhelmed. I became so lost to myself. And it wasn't about my daughters. I adore my daughters. You know, it was just my personal experience of that overwhelm and what I perceived as chaos, and just losing myself in all of that. And so, you know, I had close to probably 17, 18 years of solid, strong recovery before that relapse. And I really believe that yoga was one of the key reasons why, and another language.
Yeah.
And so as a result of this relapse, one of the greatest gifts was making a return to my yoga practice, because in the, you know, becoming a wife, becoming a mother, having a full-time job, my yoga practice fell away. I had taught for 7 or 8 years. I stopped teaching. And so that part of me that really kept me connected to my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual self, that fell away. And that overwhelm just opened up the door for the eating disorder mindset to just take root. And, I was in treatment before my daughter turned 1. And in that process of going to treatment, I committed my mind to exploring, what do I need in my life to be well? Like, what do I need to maintain wellness? What do I need to be a whole person? And that led me on my path to studying to become a yoga therapist, which is what I do now, my purpose on this planet. And in my, deepening my study of yoga, really learning the philosophies, looking at myself in new ways through the lens of yoga therapy, just came to realize that it's not going to serve me to continue to believe that I'm driven by some monster or demon, or that I'm possessed, right? That it's going to be much more beneficial if I can look at these experiences that I have related to an eating disorder, and what are they teaching me? This is a teacher now. This is not a demon. And that shift, it took a while to get there. And when I talk about this with others, their eyes are just like, what the F are you talking about? Like, no, my eating disorder is telling me to do this. And I'm like, girlfriend, I get it. I know that. But is that way of relating to it, serving you? Right? Is it allowing you to feel powerful? Is it allowing you to feel like you have another choice? Is it allowing you, to connect inward, like really inward, like where that wisdom comes through? Right. And so I think, the messages around mental illness, primarily eating disorders, just because that's what I'm most familiar with, that language, we need to start shifting it. And it needs to start happening in the treatment centers and with the psychologists and the dietitians. And so this is part of my mission, to get this message out, because I so strongly believe in it, because I'm living it. And I know what it's done for me. Right. And it's not about me, really. It's really about yoga with a capital Y and those teachings. And that when we really bring them into our lives, magic happens.
Yeah, okay. We're deviating. I'm completely deviating from the script, because this is so juicy and good right now that I have to. So
go for it.
I'm totally. This makes total sense. And one of the things that's so interesting is how archaic it is for us to be still demonizing some of those things. Like when we go and say my eating disorder and stuff like that, the way that we absolutely demonize those things and separate it is the same way that when we didn't understand the mind, just in psychology, they'd call it the little homunculus inside of us that we couldn't control, right? That was running around controlling us. And it was like pulling levers inside of us. And it wasn't really a part of us. It was a little like being that was running around pulling things. And how much it isn't really like that Wizard of Oz person inside of us. There is so much agency that we can take back. And I think another thing that you're throwing out there is that it's not this yoga with a small y, and because like I'm with a partner that's an amazing person in the yoga community. And I still when she throws out yoga, I still have these archaic ideas of, okay, so Jennifer was like going to yoga therapy, so was she like going into taking her mats and like, you know what I mean? Like, doing the sun salutation and all that kind of stuff. And then that helped her with the eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I love that you throw out the yoga with the capital Y. And so let's go there. Let's go into the yoga with the capital Y. What does that actually mean? Yoga with the capital Y versus the little y?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I really appreciate you wanting to look at that. Because I think educating others around the difference is really important. Typically when we think of yoga, right, we're thinking about going to class, like you said, with your mat and doing poses, right? And hey, that is a big part of yoga, right? And that's what we typically tend to know of yoga, especially in the States, okay? Yoga with a capital Y includes poses, and it also includes vast yoga philosophies. It includes breathing practices, meditation practices, visualization practices, mantra practices, all of these practices that are designed to help us reduce suffering in our lives. So I know that's a pretty big statement and kind of like, okay, so how's doing a pose going to reduce suffering in my life? I get it, right? But I have an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these practices are designed to help us connect inward, right? And this circles back to what we started talking about in the very beginning of our show, right? All this externalization. These practices help us connect inward, right? They help us downregulate anxiety, stress, right? The heightened energy that we live in as people, always staring at screens and buying things and, all of that kind of the way of the world, right? It helps us to kind of pull inward and helps us to listen. Like, what do I need to hear today about myself to be happy, right? To get back to your, great introduction about happiness, right? And so, these practices can help us on a physical level, build strength, help our internal organs, help with different physical conditions. It's a practice of caring for our physical bodies. Right. And, our breathing practices, my teacher always says, you teach someone to breathe, you give them back their life, right? Because we walk around not breathing, or we're breathing up here, right? And so that nourishment from our breath isn't reaching the places it needs to reach. So now all of a sudden I start breathing more regularly, being more aware of my breath. And I notice, I'm not so anxious anymore. Or, my head's a little clearer. My thoughts are slowing down. Right. And, okay, now I can make a better decision about X, Y, or Z. So all of these practices are ways that we can empower ourselves to be more present in our lives. And the repetition of those practices is what helps to, helps our brains. It helps to repattern our brains. So for, my clients who are working with, working through an eating disorder, they have a series of ingrained patterns in their brains, all of their symptom use, all of their beliefs, all of their thought patterns, right? So now we start incorporating these other practices and integrating them into life. And now we get to repattern the brain a little bit. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And it's all about that inner work. And it's possible. Yeah. It's really possible.
And you know what? You're coming in as an expert in yoga therapy and body image. And yet when you're talking about things like patterning the brain, you're talking about something that is so powerful that this may be something that people, if you haven't, or number one is whether you have an eating disorder or not, this is such a proactive way where if you do feel like, it's me versus something internal or external, it might be just a great way to integrate. I'm throwing, dude, Valeriano, you're on fire today. The union beyond the mat.
Love that. Thank you. Love that.
Right on. And Janet Ellis is completely picking up with a thumbs up for you. I don't even know where everybody is coming in from today. And we got Melanie throwing out there right now that you guys are doing a workshop in LA.
Yes. Talk about dreams coming true. Getting to co-lead a workshop with Melanie Klein. I mean, come on.
that is good times. And Chris, I know that you're I know that you're down here in Atlanta, Chris. Maybe there could be a collaboration, Atlanta, Philadelphia,
Absolutely.
Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
So I see some connections happening here, y'all. I want to go back to the language idea again and how powerful the connection is between language and body image. I think one of the things that I want to commend you for is that you're speaking and then you'll go back and edit out. You'll say but, and then you're like and then I'll hear you come back a couple of minutes afterwards and you're like and like I see you slowing down when you get up to the and to make sure that the language is something in particular, and my versus the. Can we go back and talk about that in terms of receiving words and how that directly influences how we feel in and about our bodies?
Yes, and I'll take that as a lead that I can be like, oh.
Am I not like
Oh,
the
oh, you
coolest
mean
softball
this?
person?
Oh, you mean this?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, totally. Well, keep holding it up. Keep holding it up. That's what I want you
Yes,
to do. Yeah.
yes. Body mindful yoga, which, by the
Hmm.
way, Melanie Klein, who I know is listening, wrote the forward to this book. And I co-wrote it with my yoga therapy teacher, Bob Butera. So
Amazing.
yes, it came out in November, and Body Mindful Yoga is exactly what you said. It's about the relationship between language and body image, and how the way we use words, receive words, our inner dialogue, our words that we use in our conversation with others, how that translates into how we're feeling about our bodies.
Mm.
And so the first half of the book looks at, kind of takes a social context and looks at different aspects of our culture, our society, I should say. We look at language around food, language around fitness, around social media, fashion, and kind of give people an opportunity to check in with themselves. So when I hear this word, what is my visceral reaction? Or what kind of language does that, turn on in me? Is it guilt language? Is it shame language? Am I comparing myself? And then, how does that translate then into how I'm feeling about myself? Like, I'm probably sitting like hunched over and my eyes are down, and, I'm feeling really powerless right now. And we give people opportunities to reflect on, what's some more affirming language that might come in. And then the second half of the book are yoga practices to start patterning in new language and modeling it in the world, because it's a practice. We don't wake up one day and be like, okay, I'm going to say something nice about myself and I love my body. It just doesn't work like that. It's a practice, right? It is a daily commitment. And through practice, we build up our resolve to, when we, for example, I don't know, go to the grocery store and we see a headline on a magazine that, I just saw one yesterday, so-and-so, half of her size. It's like, F off. Like,
Yeah.
this is the piece though, right? This is the piece. I see that and my reaction is F off. But you know what? It's not about that. It's about that reaction. This is where the change happens, right? So, okay, I need to sit with that. I need to do some work around. So what is that bringing up in me? Like, why do I feel like I need to react to that? What is it about me? And we offer some journaling and some exercises, and certainly encourage people to seek support from their, trusted friends or therapists or whoever they like to talk to about themselves, they trust. Like, really study that. What's that about? And then once I understand it, I can come up with different language to fill myself with. And I don't have to waste energy reacting to that headline. So
That is
that's the
so.
piece, because those headlines are going to keep coming, right? New year, new you, that comes back every year. And really, it's all year long. It just comes back in that very succinct way in those 4 words in January. It's really all year long, though.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's go into that new year, new you trap.
Yeah.
And how, subversive that can be. And, it's kind of, it's got all the candy coating of excitement and stuff like that. But what are the traps that we can fall into when it comes to this new year, new you mentality?
I think, we start to feel shameful. I think shame is a huge trap. Shame is and it's so heavy. Shame is so heavy. So now I'm feeling like I need to lose even more weight because shame has just packed on 10 pounds,
Mm.
I think we start to believe that, or the belief that we're not good enough is reiterated so forcefully, right? So then we fall into that trap. We're not good enough. And then all the behaviors that we have maybe adopted to make up for not being good enough come into play. right? And next thing you know,
Wow.
we're not present. We're not enjoying our holidays. We're not looking forward to the new year. We become so obsessed with making up for not being good enough. And we
That
really,
is,
the only proof that we have is that, what these marketers are telling us,
yeah. And
you
it
know?
comes back again. I see it looping back to what you talked about in the beginning when it comes to messaging, and the things that we're picking up aren't necessarily the big truth in life. We're
Yeah,
picking up these little truths,
right.
and again, I'm going to bridge positive psych and what you're talking about, or just the concepts in general. A lot of positive psychologists throughout the term understand what your inputs and what your outputs are. And those inputs, if you choose to interact and interface with the world, you'll always be coming into new inputs, like these new headlines or these headlines that seem new but are just kind of old messages of shame
Mm-hmm.
that kind of pull things out of us to buy or
Yeah,
consume, right?
yeah, yeah,
And those are just sort of hedonic temporary fixes, and so and so one of the things that I know positive psychology throws out is we can't change those inputs, but what we can always work on is the output, the way that we react to
yeah,
those headlines. We might want to say "fuck you" to a headline one day and be like, okay, what just alarmed me, alerted
yeah,
me,
yeah,
to that, you know. And I
absolutely.
want to throw out what people are throwing. It's absolutely true. Between growth mindset awareness and media literacy education, we can absolutely free ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Nguyen, I don't know what you're doing, but we see you too. Tongue stick out. I don't need to react to those headlines. So yeah, Melanie can't wait to take me to yoga, and Chris can't wait to see me go to yoga. I mean, Chris, bring your cameras that day. Chris is an amazing filmographer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Can I say
yeah,
something, Mark? Um,
absolutely.
we're talking about these headlines, and our
Yeah.
reaction to headlines. And the other piece that I want to bring in here is, our personal language. So let's put ourselves back in the grocery store, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, it's very normalized to stand in line at a store and talk to a stranger about how much you dislike a part of your body. I don't know why. I don't know how this has happened, but I hear it all the time. Like, people, just strangers, like, oh, I need to lose this weight, or oh, I can't stand this, or oh, I shouldn't be buying this, but I'm going to buy it. Right.
Oh my
And,
gosh. Yeah.
okay. So we need to cut that crap out. We need
Yeah.
to stop doing that. It's hurting our children, right? These are the messages so that our children are receiving about their bodies and about food and things like this. So the piece of this, body mindful yoga is modeling, like being aware of the language that you're using. And if you find yourself choosing language that disempowers you, the first step is practicing being aware of that and purposefully working on eliminating it.
Mm.
So it might not be like, okay, I'm going to start using all this affirming language. If it doesn't resonate, is it going to really matter? The first stop, I think, in this path is really tuning into what am I saying about myself out loud? Like, start there.
That
And
is
can I
so wild.
begin
Yeah.
to just really mindfully, really purposefully just begin to pull back on that?
Absolutely. And how many people, in terms of the folks that you work with, started out with sort of this self-talk,
Oh
right?
gosh. We're human. We're,
Yeah.
we're human, like we go there, we go to the guilt, we go to the shame, we go to the comparisons, right? But I think
Hmm.
it's through, in my world, the yoga practices, the practices of self-study, where we start to observe and notice it happening and realizing we have a choice. We have a choice in how we're going to respond to that. And we have a choice in beginning to, I use the word eliminate, that might be a strong word, but,
Hmm.
shift away from it. I think that's a really important piece. And as we model that in our own lives, we're freeing up the energy in the world, like
Yeah.
we're freeing up that negative, that shameful, that like just nasty energy that we put out when we talk meanfully about ourselves.
And I mean, you're really talking about how messages are passed internal to the external world, and how generation to generation, it just becomes something, it becomes something that eliminates our locus of control that you talked about at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And now you're coming full circle back to saying, well, you know what, these patterns can be completely disrupted. It can be eliminated, if you want to use that language, you know, it can be eliminated, disrupted, and it can be fed something healthy, like the idea of choice, liberation, freedom. I mean, you're talking about this new way of approaching and living life.
Yes, silence, like silence is a good thing.
Internal and external, right?
Silence is okay, you know. Stand up tall and smile, and that will radiate a much more positive vibe than you know, standing and in line with a stranger and complaining about something that probably isn't even true.
Yeah.
You know,
and we can think about how much, in terms of when we start regurgitating stuff like that, where we're not mindful of what we're kind of throwing out there from the inside, how much people around us just standing in line, then the onus is on them, because we are now becoming inputs in their life, for them to try to eliminate those kind of inputs and messages. We're just becoming part of that machine.
Absolutely. And if we think about it as, you know, passing on that good energy to our children, so that they're not growing up repeating that language. You know, I have 2 daughters, and I'll tell you, I will move mountains to protect them for as long as I can from messages around food, bodies. You know, I don't ever want them to feel ashamed for what they eat or how they look. I mean, and I'm very aware that my ability to protect them from all of that it's going to run out as they get older. You know, but if my husband and I can model in our home, you know, certain type of language around food and bodies, then maybe we're setting a foundation for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, like, this is amazing. And I'm gonna go on where the ADD is taking me right now, because there's just this intuitive, guttural thing that is just hitting me right now, and I'm just gonna throw it out there because this is me using I talk right now. And you know what? When I think yoga, again, I'm thinking of this very stereotypical, you know, if I were to go to class, here I am, kind of a larger, more robust body type, and going into a very petite sized class with very petite, small, white women.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I see yoga with the capital Y as this thing that has the possibility to free, but then I can't be the only person with these conceptions of yoga out there.
No, you're not. And what you're describing is very accurate.
Really? Okay.
So I'll just like kind of share that the work that I do with clients is one-on-one, right? So it kind of eliminates that environment that you've just really perfectly described, right?
Okay.
So that's, you know, yoga with the capital Y in a one-on-one setting with a trained yoga therapist, you know, that's the way to go. But I'm biased. What can I say? But if, you know, for someone going to a yoga class, so what was your question actually? Did you ask a question or did I butt in?
Well, I think I threw out this idea that how much does I mean that stereotype, right? That I have with other community members.
Yeah.
Like how much does that impact certain people? Because I mean, I'm wondering what my resistance has been, because Melanie's been trying to take me to yoga class. And I think one of the things in the back of my mind is, well, everybody's going to look at this lard ass, like Filipino coming in that can't do what they're doing. Yeah. Like, what if I, you know, what if I crack a fart? You know, like,
So, So, you know, looking at some of that insecurity on your end is important.
Yeah.
But then there's also this piece of it that this is kind of like what a lot of our yoga spaces look like. But I want to share that there are a lot of really wonderful efforts underway, through the Yoga and Body Image Coalition, other organizations that are really looking to help expand the definition of what a yoga class is or what yoga is. And we're seeing, we are starting to see more diversity showing up in classes, and yoga becoming more accessible, being taught in ways that are more, to use my word, body mindful. A big part of my mission this year is educating yoga teachers on the language that we use in our classes. In fact, I had the very first body mindful yoga teacher training coming up this month here in Philadelphia, January 19th and 20th. And that is all about how, as yoga teachers, a lot of our language has been passed down, and we need that. We need that process to learn. Right. But I think, with the movement in yoga around trauma sensitivity, this new awareness around accessibility, around body image, now it's time to look at the language that we're using. And I know a lot of this has started already, but how can we start even changing up the cueing and the messaging and the themes so that we're not reinforcing people's preoccupation or worry about certain body parts when they're moving? Can we look at some of the metaphors that we use that maybe on the surface sound just fine, but might actually be implying something that's not really okay, and can make people feel very self-conscious about their bodies and bring up issues of self-worth and things like that. So I think the yoga community is really ready to look at language in this way, to invite people like yourself to their classes, to encourage it. And I'm hopeful that when you do go, that you find you have a positive experience. And if you don't, that you'll continue to explore other environments until you find the right one.
Well, yeah, and what I love about the way that invitation has gone is I've seen multiple folks in the yoga community, including my own partner, who went to her first yoga class and was laughing through the whole thing. And now it's so intense and a part of what she does in her everyday life now that it isn't something where I shouldn't have those kind of expectations where, it's going to be this sort of detrimental thing, or it's going to be like a life-changing thing the very first time I go,
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's an experience, and it's you got to start somewhere if you're willing to start, and
well, I'm ready to go.
All
and
right,
I'm glad that you went. I'm glad that you went with me on that. It looks like you've got this partner in Melanie Klein that's just dropping all these amazing things going on. The YBIcoalition.com, she's got your back. For those of you who want to check it out. Diversifying yoga imagery, challenging the stereotype of the yoga body, thereby making the practice more accessible to all. Again, a plug for the Yoga Body Image Coalition, YBIcoalition.com. Chris, exactly. That's why I love seeing the alternative yoga where it's tattoos all around, various body types, ages. Ooh, I love it. I know how Chris talks. Whenever he goes, he goes, oh. You guys gotta totally talk. Distinguishing between yoga practice, the yoga industry, and yoga culture are not one and the same. Wow, I have not even thought about that. So there's all these other things that are beginning to emerge now. Number one, you got me to get out of my seat and get on the floor and talk to you because my battery was dying. I was like, we cannot have a battery die in the middle of the show. That's why I moved. Number two, you have said enough. Have you realized that it's been almost an hour that we've been on?
No, I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it. I feel like we scratched the surface, though,
I feel like we have as well. And I think this is why you're doing workshops in LA. You're doing workshops in Pennsylvania. And you're going to be, I think you're going to be doing stuff in Miami and different parts of the world and stuff.
Yeah,
so let's talk about something that didn't work before the show. Your website, because I think that's the next place that we can continue the dialogue. I've got the website up.
Okay, great, good.
And I just checked and it's working.
Okay, good. Sorry about that weirdness.
No apologies on this show. We're going to get it up and working for the end of the show. I knew it'd be working. So it's working now. And so for those of us who want to continue the conversation, especially Chris, Melanie, Nikki, it sounds like you already have a connection. Janet, like all these folks who've been a part of this. And by the way, we had Puerto Rico tuning in today, just in case you didn't see that. Jorge from Puerto Rico was tuning in. So for those of us who want to continue the conversation, what are we going to see when we go to yogaforeatingdisorders.com?
Well, I just want to invite everybody to come to yogaforeatingdisorders.com, please. I love visitors.
Yeah.
You'll learn a little bit more about me and my personal story. You'll learn about yoga therapy and what it is and how my approach to using yoga therapy when I work with my eating disorder clients. You also find clients, I also lead trainings for professionals and yoga teachers and anyone who's looking to integrate yoga into their work with their eating disorder clients. And I also mentor professionals. So lots of great offerings that you can read about and learn about. I also have a blog. And my blog over the past year or so has morphed into a place where I share other people's stories, mostly other people's stories of recovery. So if you are listening and you're interested in sharing your recovery story, please feel free to contact me, get in touch. I love sharing other people's voices. And then I also you can see all my articles and my podcast interviews and just a ton of resources that I hope people find helpful.
Oh, amazing. And you've been all over the media. So I go to the website, go check everything out there. And there's so many good events going on, especially when you're out here in LA. It looks like we're all going to a workshop. Amazing.
Yes. You should come to our workshop, Mark.
I would love to. I didn't know if I was invited, but now that I've been invited, it's fun. We're gonna totally rock out. It's a shame when folks who need and could benefit from the practice are deterred by these stereotypes about the practice and yoga practitioners. So you still have the conversation flowing. Let's keep the conversation going because that's the way we change the way people interpret and pass on truths. This is where we can stop the things that we thought were these sort of invisible lies that we've been living. We can make them apparent. We can stop us from passing them on in line in the grocery store to our children. And we can really create this world where folks are empowered through language, through the way that they perceive themselves, through the way that we demystify some of the stereotypes about the way that our disorders, quote unquote, are hindering or promoting an opportunity for us to live an amazing, great life.
Absolutely.
Kreatsoulas!
Yes!
You're amazing, homie. You're the real deal.
I
couldn't cancel the show. So here we go, homie. We had every opportunity for the show to break down, for the batteries to go out, and it didn't, which means that something really amazing is on our side. So we're going to end the show with this. This is why the show is called The Golden Mic. And so I want you to imagine, if you will, that a golden mic is coming from your Pennsylvania abode and stopping right in front of you right now, Kreatsoulas. Now, the cool thing about this golden mic is that it translates into every language all across the world for 2 minutes or less. The world is listening. So, Jennifer Kreatsoulas, what is it that you want to tell us through this golden mic? Your golden mic is live now.
What's coming to mind is my mantra, which is begin again. And that it really doesn't matter that, if you're a yoga practitioner or whatever it is that you practice or whatever self-care that you do or whatever your wellness strategies are, it doesn't matter if they've stopped. All that matters is that you begin again, right? So begin again, make yourself a priority again, and make that choice again and again and again, right? If you find yourself in the grocery store line today, and you make a comment, you know what? Just forgive yourself and have compassion for why that comment lives inside of you. have compassion for whatever your pain is, or whatever your story is, or whatever your belief is about yourself, compassion for that. And then begin again and set yourself to work on, eliminating that or making a better choice that's going to raise you up, it's going to raise you up and in turn raise up other people around you. So I just want to share, I think, those 2 words, just begin again. That's all that matters.
Amazing. Jennifer, I want you to take that golden mic. I just want to hold it in front of you. I just want to feel you to feel that heaviness of that golden mic. Pass it to somebody. And I want you to drop that golden mic like it's hot. Hold it on that mic. You just spat hot fire, lightning bolts, high fives are coming all around. Begin again, boom. Begin again, boom. Begin again, boom. Jennifer, it has been wonderful. We have to have you back. Chris,
oh my gosh,
you've
I
been
would love it. I would love to.
Chris, you guys need to engage with each other. Chris, let's have you on the show too. Like you've been a chatty one this episode, Chris. So we'll have you on the show as well to talk more about yoga and body from your end, Chris. But then we'll have you back, Jennifer. Melanie, I'm sure we might have you on one day as well. For those of you who are still watching, remember to share this out. What an amazing story that you have. What an amazing thing that you do with your passion, Jennifer. And for those of you, and for those of you watching who are sharing this out now, live or on the replay, I want to say thank you. And I have a question for all of you. For those of you who are living life in a happy manner and living life to full capacity when it comes to your purpose, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? I'm Mark Cordone. This is Jennifer Kreatsoulas. This is Golden Mike 104. We will see you real soon. Thanks, y'all!